Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and we've got a great show for you tonight, as we always do. We're on the, I should say we're not on the cusp of the end of the month, because we are literally at the end of the month of June, and we're going to be heading into July starting tomorrow. And, of course, this is the holiday weekend, the July 4th, Independence Day, if you will, here in the United States. So we're looking forward to a holiday. So this will be the last show, of course, of June, and then we'll be heading into a new month. But we've got a great show for you tonight. Got a very exciting Coach's Corner panel. We got some excitement there as well. Got my good friend, Mr. Clint Wright, of course, is going to be joining us as he does so often, and a very seasoned veteran of the game, but also fairly regular panelist here. And then we're going to be joined by a newcomer, not to the golf game itself or to the profession, but newcomer to the Coach's Corner panel, Mr. Brandon Stooksbury. He's going to be coming on for his first time tonight, and then he's actually going to be joining me here in 2 weeks' time on the 14th of July for a more in-depth interview on the second half of the show, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. But let me just remind everybody, before I bring the guys onto the Coach's Corner discussion tonight, let me remind everybody, of course, we are live on Thursdays from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, unless otherwise stated. And quickest way to find us, go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live, or you can just type Golf Talk Live up in the search key. And during the live broadcast from 6 to 8 p.m. Central, that's 7 to 9 for those of you on the East Coast under Eastern Standard Time, you can find us there. We're always live. But for some reason, if you're not able to join us during the live broadcast, not a problem. Visit that link and just scroll down the page a little bit until you see the on-demand section, and it will always have the most current shows at the top. Of course, all of the programs are auto-recorded. So if you can't join us live, not to worry. You can still go listen to the program when it's convenient for you. Maybe if you're sitting down at the beach and you've got an iPhone there or an iPad that you're surfing around on for something to do, just click on the link, blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live, and you can listen to some of the great discussions that we have not only on the Coach's Corner panel, but some great interviews along the way as well. If you want to call in or speak to the guests at any time during the live broadcast, you can do so by calling area code 646-716-4667. That's 646-716-4667. Or if you want to reach out to me personally, if you've got any comments or questions about the show, or if you're somebody in the golf profession, whether you be a teacher, coach, or an entrepreneur, or maybe somebody you've written a great book that you think will help the many millions of amateur golfers out there, and you want to share it with us, you're more than happy to reach out to me personally, and you can do so by my email address at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And if you want to get updates on the show, again, the quickest way to do that is through social media. I update on most of the social media sites, but particularly through Facebook. You just go to Golf Talk Live blog in Facebook.com, and the show's updated there weekly as who's going to be on the show and the guests and so forth and the time. And then, of course, you can follow me on Twitter as well at Ted and Buck CEO in capital letters. As I said, I got a great show for you tonight. On the Coach's Corner panel, starting up, of course, is Clint Wright and Brandon Stooksbury. And then a little bit later in the show, I'm going to be joined by my very special guest, Asia Adell, who's a young professional golfer from the Las Vegas, Nevada area, currently playing on the Cactus Tour, but she's making her way this fall onto the LPGA Tour. In fact, she's going to the Q School here in a couple of months' time, and I think she'll have no problems getting there. But we'll talk to her in the second half of the program. But let me just tell you a little bit about the guys on the panel. As I mentioned, Clint's been on the show many, many times. He's a 30-year member of the PGA. He's also a partner at TGM Golf, and he's a big proponent of the R3 approach, which we've talked about here on the show before. And I think he's going to come back here in a month or so time and talk about some different things that they're adding to their program and some new different approaches, if you will. And as I've said also many times, he's one of my favorite guests on the show. We always have a good time, and we're both going to welcome with open arms a newcomer to the panel, but certainly not a newcomer to the game, and that's Brandon Stooksbury. And he's the owner-operator of Stooksbury Golf. Brandon is also the Director of Instruction at the prestigious Idle Hour Club in Macon, Georgia, and was ranked in Golf Digest Best in State Instructor Rankings for Nevada and honored as the 2011 Southern Nevada PGA Teacher of the Year. He specializes, of course, in competitive player development and enjoys teaching players of all levels, right from you beginners out there right up to the PGA Tour. So, gentlemen, welcome to Golf Talk Live, and particularly welcome to the Coach's Corner panel.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Thanks,
all right.
Ted. Looking forward to it, man.
Not a problem. Thank you, Brendan. As I said, a newcomer to the panel, but certainly not to the game. Many years of instruction out there, and I'm very honored to have you join us here tonight as well. Let me just make one final quick note, guys, and then we'll get on to this discussion. I want to apologize for last week. I actually posted, as I always do every week, the shows through social media, Facebook, Twitter, and so on, LinkedIn and whatnot. And literally last minute, I had to cancel the show. Unfortunately, my guest, Mark Gilmartin, who is the president and CEO of Hole-in-One International, had a scheduling conflict, and actually one or two of the guys on the panel for last week had some scheduling conflicts as well last minute, and unfortunately I couldn't get a replacement in time. So I apologize for those of you that tune in expecting a broadcast. Literally it happened right after I posted it through social media, so I apologize for that. And then also one other thing I want to make note, on the Tuesday morning show this week that we had, my co-host Cindy Miller and I had some great guests on the show, and we experienced literally in the last 10 minutes of the show a power outage that really knocked everything out of whack for the last 10 minutes of the show. So I apologize for both of those incidents, and appreciate you guys coming back and offering your support this week. But as I mentioned to you guys, on the discussion tonight at Coach's Corner, we're going to talk about, this was something that actually I had a conversation with Pete Buchanan and John Hughes, who've also been regulars on the panel. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about the three levels or categories of students, beginners, intermediates, and advanced students. And I sort of left out the pros. We're going to add them in a little bit tonight. I want to do things a little bit differently, guys. Clint, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you just to get us going here, and I'll explain what I want you to sort of start with. And then, Brandon, I'm going to jump to you as well and let you give your thoughts. And then the next round of question, I'll skip and start with you, Brandon, if that's all right.
Sure.
Sound good? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Clint, what I want to do is I said that there's three levels of golfers that or as I said, four levels, but three we're going to focus on primarily tonight. And let me just give it sort of a quick synopsis of each of them, and then I'm going to ask my question to you. The beginning students, those are the students that are obviously not advanced or a beginner student, and their tendencies tend to be very wild and inconsistent. Players who more often than not shoot double bogey golf or worse sort of fall in that category. In the intermediate category, and this is certainly not science, but just to give you a general overview, these tend to be the golfers with some yet limited control over the golf ball, but yet lack consistency. So they're a little bit better than obviously the beginner player, but they still lack some inconsistency, some issues. We're going to talk about that tonight as well. And they tend to range from sort of bogey to double bogey golf, fall in that. And certainly there's some variances, but that's generally the rule of thumb. In the advanced group, of course, they tend to be the players that play better than bogey golf. They're a little more consistent in their play, but have a bad shot, as we all do from time to time. So that's essentially, and of course the pros, we know what they do. They don't make as many mistakes as the rest of us do, but they do make some from time to time. We talked about, Clint, some of the things about how for each of them, when John and Pete were on the panel, about how and how much time we should be spending on the practice tee with them, and how much time we should be spending on the golf course. And both of them sort of resoundingly came back with the answer, it really depends on sort of the assessment leading up to the lesson or the coaching plan. So I want you to sort of recap, if you will, and cover that a little bit. When we're dealing with these different golfers, obviously we want to assess what level they're at, but tell us a little bit about the assessment process, if you will, to help some of the teachers out there ascertain what level the players are at.
Well, there's a lot of different things you can look at. I mean, one of the things that we call them a little bit different. We don't break it down quite as advanced beginners or whatever. We look at social recreation golfer, social recreation competitive players. You're going to play in your club championship, or you're just going to go out to bang it around. And one of the things that we are, from an assessment standpoint, we try to ask a person, what are you trying to do with your game? Why are you playing? And then we go back, how long have you been playing? Have you just started? Did you start 20 years ago and give it up when the kids were born and now you're getting back to it? just where are you? I usually take a person to basically to evaluate their short game, their chipping, and their full swing. We look at them, take some videos, decide with the student, okay, here's where we see you're at. Here's where you need to spend most of your time to get quick improvement. The old trick I used to use was teach them how to chip and putt first, because if I could lower their score, I was a genius.
Right.
You get them to buy in that, well, this is working, so maybe the full swing stuff will work. So we kind of combine the assessment with a improvement plan. An approach to, okay, if you look at how a person's scoring and what their purpose of playing is, so there's more to it than just ball striking and what your swing look like. I try to understand what the purpose of the players wanting to play golf is, and how much time are you going to spend? How much time do you have to practice and improve your game? What's your intent of commitment? And then I can help a person decide where they're going to get the best results for the limited amount of time they may want to spend on trying to play the game. But most of that evaluation just comes down to eyeball. I mean, you just gotta see them try to do it, to give them a chance to show you what they got or don't have.
Right, exactly. Well said. Brandon, I want to phrase it just a little bit differently for you, if you don't mind. Again, sort of a similar question, but what I want to ask you is, with and I'm using these levels, and again, they're not carved in stone. There may be different phrases or approaches that you may, or categories that you may use, but I've just broken it down to sort of simplify it so people understand what a beginning golfer and maybe a little better intermediate and an advanced golfer is. But obviously, there's different ways that we're going to approach each of the different levels. We've done the assessment now. We're looking at categorizing them in our minds, and we're certainly not doing a big memoir about it, but we're trying to see how they fit into what area. Obviously, with beginning golfers, one of the early things that we want to do is make sure and check that they have good, sound fundamentals. So what are some of the critical components? And just, again, you don't have to get into all the meat and potatoes, but just give us sort of a general overview, in your opinion, for the three levels, are what the primary things that you're looking at and looking for the beginner, the intermediate, and the advanced golfers after you've done your assessment. What are you looking for to make sure that that's what you want to bring to them, make sure that they're fundamentally sound in certain areas, and how much is too much and how much is too little for each of the categories? I know that's a big question, but I know you can handle it.
Yeah. All right. So let me see if I can attack this thing. Here's what I would tell you. I think in a perfect world, you do a significant, very in-depth assessment of every player that comes to you, regardless of their level. I think in a perfect world, you ask better players, and by better players, I would say anybody 15 handicap and less, I would qualify as that kind of mid-category. In a perfect world, you ask them to go off and play rounds of golf and collect some stats and bring it back to you. I think in a perfect world, you sit down with a professional player or a high-level amateur, and they're already keeping their stats, and you can kind of attack their weaknesses. And that's all in a perfect world. Now, rarely does that ever happen. If you're teaching a professional player, specifically somebody that's on the PGA Tour, then you can get all the statistical information and do your own research. But very few amateur golfers, if any, are ever keeping their stats to a level that you can really use them as a coach when they walk up to you. That's all in a perfect world. I think in a world that's not perfect and you don't have those things, I think you have to attack weaknesses first. And so if you kind of walk with me, imagine the individual skill or skills that are required to play good golf. And hypothetically, let's say putting is a skill, and chipping is a skill, and short pitching is a skill, and long pitching is a skill, and iron play is a skill, and driving is a skill, so forth and so on, right? If you could imagine those across a chart in kind of a bar graph style look, right? And so each skill is a bar on a graph. I think you have to go after weaknesses first. And that's regardless of the type of player that they are, because the weakness is always going to be the one that kicks them in the tail when they need it to hold up, right? It's always going to be the one that breaks down the first. I would tell you that when an average player or a club member that that plays once a week and a couple of company scrambles throughout the year comes to me and needs some help and says I'm ready to get better, here's kind of the spiel that I give them. First and foremost, I need you to be able to strike the golf ball solidly. I need the ball to be airborne and moving in a general direction downrange. I don't really care if it's curving right or curving left, or for that matter, if it's curving right one time and then left the second time. I just need it to be in the air and moving in the direction of the target, right? Mm-hmm. Once we can do that, then I need that dispersion narrowed enough to keep it in play, right?
Yeah.
And so
well said.
That's step two. Right, and so if they come to my tee and every time they strike it with a 7-iron or a driver or whatever, if it's not in the air, moving down range, that's where I'm starting. I don't care where any of the rest of their game is. Right, and obviously this is a beginner player, right, or not a very highly skilled player. And once I can get them striking it solidly and controlling the direction enough to keep it on the reservation, so to speak. That may not be a very political correct way to say that anymore. But anyway, then I'm going to talk. If I can get them near the hole, let's just say 30 yards from a green in regulation, now it becomes a short game problem, right? Because now they're covering the 400-yard par 4 in 2 shots somewhere around the green without any penalty strokes. Now I've got to move on to another part of their game, which is short game, right? And then eventually I've got to move on to putting. And I would say that's how I handle it with any beginner player. Obviously, a more advanced player is going to come to me and they're going to have those things. And so, you get into talking about start line control and eliminating one side of the golf course for a better player. You talk about up and down percentages for a better player. You start to talk about birdie conversion rates for better players. I'm a stat guy, right? So I like to explain to people, what it takes to kind of track your game and know if you're getting better. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question at all.
No,
but that's how I would handle it with a less skilled player. And then as we get better and better, then we move up that chart, right? And so, a 10 handicap can move it in the direction of the target every time. And as long as they're not having any penalty strokes, then I'm probably going to start with them somewhere around short game.
Right.
And then that works till you get to about a single-digit handicap. And once you get to a single-digit handicap, then you've got to start to talk about things like not just hitting a green with your third shot. Right, if you got to talk about how close you hit it with your chip shot, and you can't just talk about 2-putting or giving yourself a chance to make a par. You've got to start to talk about getting it close enough to actually make a par, things of that nature. And so I think it just climbs that ladder as the player that's in front of you gets better and better.
Well said, Brandon. And no, you hit it right on the nose. It's exactly what I was looking for. Clint, one of the things that comes to mind as well, and Brandon did sort of lay it out a little bit. It's not just the skill levels that are different, but it's also the approach and what you're going to look for as a golf professional when you're working with these different students. Obviously you're not, some of the things that, as Brandon just pointed out, that he's going to talk to a more advanced player about, he's not certainly going to overload, and that's one of the issues that I want to get at too, is how much is too much information for the beginner golfer. We've talked about things before, things like ball flight laws and things like that are certainly good information to know, but is there a danger of information overload, for the beginning golfer? And again, based on the assessments that we do, and as Brandon talked about and as you talked about, does that dictate how much information we're going to parlay, if you will, at the different levels? And that's for Clint.
Well, yeah, I think there's information overload everywhere. I mean, watch the Golf Channel. This information overload. I mean, and I get emails every day like you do from the guys that's got the newest secrets of hitting it longer and straighter, and how to lower your score in 10 minutes. I get a chuckle every morning. I open my emails and I find another method for lowering my score overnight. And it's amazing that apparently that we have a golfing public that thinks that some of that's valid. So I think there's a tremendous amount of overload. And Brandon made a real key statement a minute ago. He said it's the third shot. So,
That sounds like a shameless plug.
That's a shameless plug, and I'm not too proud to put it in there. But we come to that, and obviously that being able to put the ball in the air and hit it down range is important. But I guess my philosophy has always been I've done it many times. I've hit it 500 yards with on a par 5 and end up making a 6. I mean, so hitting it down range 500 yards didn't make much difference. If I can't learn to take advantage of where I advance the ball to, then my score's not going to get any better. That's one of the reasons that we have people in the last 30 years, handicaps haven't come down. Yeah. We got better clubs, better equipment, and so I think we're getting a tremendous amount of overload of information that to me is directing our golfing public in somewhat the wrong direction on how to improve their game. I'm soapboxing here a little bit, but I think that I ask the question now, you want to play like Jason Day? Everybody, oh yeah, I'd love to play like Jason Day. Now remember, I didn't ask you, do you want to hit it like Jason Day?
Right.
I said, do you really want to play like him? And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, he won the Players' Championship by 4 shots and hit 3 greens on the front 9.
Mm-hmm.
And they look at you got to be kidding. I said, well, no, he knows how to play. And I think that's where we need to get back into our teaching, is not necessarily trying to teach somebody to hit a ball perfectly. And I think Brandon was getting to this, to hit the ball perfectly, move it downrange, get it in the air, and then know what to do with it once you've got it within that third shot range.
Right, exactly.
The best players in the world play that way. You look at the stats. I mean, they every one play that way. Hit 10, 11 greens, 12, 13 greens in regulation, and they shoot 69. They just don't give any of them back because their third shot is where they play. It's where they make their money.
Exactly. Yeah, and it brings up another interesting point, Brendan. I'm going to flip over to you now on this, and something that I sort of asked about is how do we sort of differentiate when it's time to have them on the practice tee or the driving range, and when we need to get them on the golf course. And based on what you were talking about earlier, Brandon, obviously we need to ensure that they're going to be able to hit it in the air. There's no point in taking them out to the golf course if they can't hit the golf ball with any sort of consistency. And that doesn't mean they have to be hitting it, as you said, in a tight dispersion. I mean, that's ultimately what we want to get them to. But, if they're duffing it and topping all of their shots, especially as a beginning golfer, the last thing we want to do is get them out on the golf course and just frustrate them anymore. So how do we find that balance act with having them on the practice tee or the driving range? And let's start with the beginning golfer. How do we decide when it's time to move them to the golf course and teach them how to play? Is there a point where it's too soon, or is there a point where, okay, they're hitting the ball decent now we need to get them on the golf course? How do you find that balancing act?
The moment 6 to 7 out of 10 shots are solid and airborne, I want them on the golf course. I'm kind of a golf course, and let me put it a different way, right? I at some point in my career, I got pretty comfortable with my knowledge of the golf swing and swing mechanics, and so I started to branch out in some areas of the golf game that I studied and tried to get better at it teaching. And over the last 4 or 5 years, I've done a lot of study in the world of motor skill development and human learning. And some of the things that I found were nothing short of astonishing. And it's completely changed the way I teach golf and the way I approach getting other people to understand it. And so I want them on the golf course as soon as I can get them. I want them in the playing environment as soon as possible for two reasons. The first is that they will actually learn better, and by better I mean learn faster when they're in that environment as opposed to the environment of the driving range, in my opinion. Actually, it's not my opinion at all. There's plenty of research that backs that up, and across lots of sports, not just golf in particular. That's the first thing. The second thing is to Clint's point, I want them to understand that, you know what, if you don't hit it perfectly and it may not get airborne, maybe you hit it, 2 grooves thin and you hit a little screamer, but it ends up going right down the middle of the fairway, you can still play that golf shot. You can still hit the next golf shot. That golf is not an art contest. It's not a contest of who can hit the best golf shots or the prettiest golf shots. It's a math problem. And there are lots of ways to get the lowest score possible. And you don't learn that on the range. And so I try to get them to the golf course as soon as I can get them on the golf course. I refuse to do short game work anywhere but on the golf course. Just won't do it. I've got plenty of facilities at Idle Hour to teach it. I've got a 6-hole par 3 golf course that's just awesome. I won't teach short game out there. I go to the golf course to teach short game because I want them in a real environment. I want them to feel the pressure of standing on number 10 tee, trying to hit that golf ball or hit that golf shot that we've talked about when there's water left and trees right. I want them to feel that because it then transfers to the golf course better. By better, I mean faster. And so I would say really early in my teaching, you're right. If they can't get it airborne, if they're a raw beginner and they miss it 3 times before they actually touch it in the 4th swing, I'm probably not going to take that, that person to the golf course. But the moment, again, 6 or 7 out of 10 are reasonably solid and moving in a general direction of the hole, I'm taking them to the golf course.
Yeah, and I would agree with that as well. I think that there is a point. The reason why I wanted to ask that question again, and we talked about it when John and Pete were on the show a few weeks ago, but the reason why I wanted to ask that is because, we've all 3 of us and the others that have been on the panels before have all seen this as teacher professionals. Time and time again, we see, the amateur golfers out there spending an hour or 2 on the driving range just, raking and beating balls without any sort of purpose. And then they get out on the golf course and, they can't understand why their range game isn't coming out into the golf course. They're hitting beautiful shots on the driving range or the practice tee, but they get out in the golf course and hole number 1, their knees are knocking and the nerves are setting in, and maybe they've got a couple of groups behind waiting for their opportunities, and the nerves set in and they're just, all over the place, and they can't figure out why. And it's because they're not putting those principles that we're teaching them to practice. And this comes to another point that I want to, Clint, I want you to talk about a little bit. We've touched on many times in the past, but what do you think is it going to take besides beating them over the head to get golfers to understand, as much as we want them to come to us and we want to be able to help them with their game, if they're not going to then take that information that we provide and the skills that we've helped them to learn out there and put it into practice, and all they're going to do is just keep coming back we want the business, we want certainly to make some money, but at the same time, it's also equally frustrating when they're not putting these principles to practice. They're not getting out there and working. And to prove your point, to play like Jason Day, you don't have to hit the shot exactly like Jason Day, but you can bet that he practices with a purpose and he's out there playing the shots that he's working on. A lot of amateurs don't do that. How do we break through that shell? What is it going to take, do you think, to get the amateur golfer to realize if you want to become a better player, it's not just about taking lessons, it's about putting those principles to practice? What do we got to do to get that?
Yeah, I think Brandon is right on the money. Let me just add, and I'll get to your question, but the one thing you mentioned about the practice tee to the first tee, and one of the reasons that Brandon's correct in the learning process is get them on the golf course, is the criteria for success changes immediately from the practice tee to the first tee. If you ask a person on the practice tee how many times they actually watch the ball stop on the driving range, they would tell you never. A successful shot on the practice, A successful shot on the practice tee is a ball that's in the air and going where they think it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
They've got another ball drug over before that one hits the ground. When you go to the first tee box, the criteria for success is where it stops, not how it flies.
Right.
And that's the coming to your question, is that when you've seen it, that you see guys out there with their 7-iron feet making full swing 7-irons. They get on the first tee, they hit it down the fairway. Let's say their 7-irons, 155-yard club, and they stand there and they pull out their 6-iron and try to hit a 3/4 6.
Yeah.
They haven't practiced a 3/4 shot in a month, but they're going to try to play one on the first hole. So the question comes down is that I think that's our responsibility to tell the person, okay, and this is an evaluation of the player. Are they an aggressive swinger, or do they hit more 3/4 shots when they're out trying to play? What are they doing? And maybe this is a little bit more towards the advanced player, but the beginning player is going to have a personality as well. And I think we have to convince them, look, when I'm standing on the practice tee with a person I'm working with, and over the years working with, is that I'm trying to teach them shots that they can actually use on the golf course and convince them, hey, look, when you get at 145, you don't need to be trying to kill a 9-iron. You need to be hitting this little cruiser 8-iron you've been practicing.
Mm-hmm.
We can say it any way you want to. Practice the way you play or play the way you practice, however you want to see it. But that's our job as instructors and teachers, to guide our students to understand that we're out here trying not to necessarily develop your ball striking. I'm trying to help you learn how to play the game. All right? We want to improve their game or their ability to play the game successfully enough that they'll play it for a lifetime. Okay? And I like Brandon said a minute ago, there's 125 guys teed up on the tour or 150, however many they got now. And every one have a different style of play.
Mm-hmm.
But they all strike the ball good, but they all have a different style of play. And that's where they're playing the game. And we can get into a lot of little details and stuff, but to me, it's all about trying to practice and teach them and guide them into buying in that I just want to get the ball either on the green, around the green, and then be able to chip and putt. Ted, that's me in the short game. I'm going to teach a person how to chip and putt.
Right.
And and Brandon's right. I mean, with a real raw beginner, I'm going to start them out around the chipping green just to try to develop a little bit of technique. But as soon as their technique is fine, then you got to get that person in playing situations as quickly as you can. Because then not only are they developing their technique of making the club strike the ball, they're developing their decision-making skills as well. What kind of shot do I need to hit here? Is it a bump and run? Is it a flop shot? Is it a 54 with a little knockdown, little pinch shot? My decision-making there, once my technique is good, is obviously the difference between an up and in and a chip on the green and a 2-putt for a bogey. So decision-making skills are just important at that level as it is ball striking.
Well said, Clint. Thank you. It raises an interesting thought to me. We've heard, and you mentioned earlier about the Golf Channel, and again, this is not to shadow a criticism to anyone, but we've watched golf on TV over the years, and we've watched different lesson tee and so forth. And I think the average player has misunderstood some of the information. I mean, when you're putting together a short segment, you can't get all the details in, as we try to get as much in as we can, but even we can't get every intimate detail, and that's why it's important to get out and work with your local professional where they can take a little bit more time and get into some of the nuts and bolts. But, one of the things that I think a lot of amateurs misunderstood in the practice sessions, and that's when they're out on the tee, on the practice tee, as an example, it's important to work through your bag. It's important to work on the shorter irons as well as the driver and so forth. But you're right, Clint. They don't practice these sort of in-between shots, these sort of finesse shots that sometimes they may be called to use out on the golf course. So they, they'll start off and maybe they'll pull out, hit a few, soft wedges out there. And when they feel they're hitting the wedge pretty good, they might go to their 9 or 8 iron and, and progress up through the bag. And eventually they'll, pull out their driver. And they think, okay, well, I've warmed up now and I'm ready to go out on the golf course. And like you said, they hit their first drive and it's a pretty nice shot down there in the middle of the fairway, and they've got maybe 155 yards. But as you said, instead of pulling out their 7 iron, which is their 155-yard club, they're pulling out their 6 and they're trying to finesse a 3/4 6 iron, which they never practice.
Right.
And this becomes right. And Brandon, this brings me to sort of lead into the question I want to ask you. We've all touched a little bit about on the beginning golfer. We don't want to get too involved in the course management, or certainly we want to teach them how to play golf, but we don't want to get into too much strategy too early on, as I said, about information overload with the beginning golfer. So as we move into the intermediate and advanced players, now sort of the time we want to get into more strategy and a little bit more really playing the game and understanding and analyzing what they need to do on the golf course. So walk us through that process that you're doing with your students when you start to work on the management side of their game.
Well, I think the first thing I would say, and this is certainly a warning to any other golf instructors that are listening to your show, and something that I would also want the amateur golfers to hear, and hopefully they can go do something about. Never make the mistake of assuming that the player knows how to play a golf course just because their handicap might be lower. I think our business is sorely short on time spent teaching people how to navigate a golf course. And what I mean by that is, little things, about should I hit 3-wood here? Do I need to hit driver here? Does it make sense? Well, it's a 320-yard hole. Of course I need to hit driver because I can get up there near the green. Well, there's some 320-yard holes that makes sense, and some it absolutely does not. The green is big here, and so the pin's in the front, and I whip out my rangefinder, which, by the way, is ruining course management. But, I whip out my rangefinder, and I hit the flag, and it's 135 yards, so I'm going to pull my 135-yard club, and there's 17 yards of green, behind that flag, and there's a bunker about 3 feet in front of it. And they just never think about the fact that, maybe you need to hit it 5 yards farther than this flag, fly it dead over the flag, and you've still, got a 15 to 20 foot putt that may be within the tour, inside the PGA Tour average from that distance, and so people don't understand that. They either haven't been taught it, haven't been taught those things, and have found a way to be. I assume we're talking about the more advanced player now, right? Am I on the same page as you are? Yeah. So they've either never been taught that, or they've found a way to be good despite that, which begs the question: how good could they be if they actually had that information? For example, I teach a lot of different college players in my part of Georgia. We have a lot of small colleges that are really close to me, and so I teach a lot of kids at that level. And Division I collegiate athlete, right, going to school for free because of his golfing ability. And when I showed him a yardage book that I had made on our golf course and told him that I wanted him to start doing this, he looked at me like I had 3 heads.
Yeah, didn't have a clue, did he?
He had never seen it before. And I asked him, I said, just for sake of conversation, Jimmy, I said, Jimmy, if you don't know how to do this stuff, how do you play golf? I mean, what is your plan, right? And he said, well, I'll pull the club that makes sense, to try to hit it in the fairway, and I just hit it down the fairway. I said, oh, okay, what's next? Well, I pull the club to the flag, and I just try to hit it close. And he was dead serious.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And I mean, I'm telling you, Division I collegiate athlete. I mean, this kid's getting his college paid for, right? And he's literally just going to shoot the flag with his rangefinder and then hit it to that yard. And so I was taken back. I was floored, right? And so we went through this whole conversation. You know, I get up to the green, and I'm showing him kind of how to mark a green out, you know, and how to cross out, you know, how to look at a green and figure out where they're kind of, you know, they might put a pin and then crosshair that spot, you know, and hit different putts to it. And he's like, well, but what if the pin's up there? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you don't know where the pin's going to be, you know? And so I went through this whole conversation about how golf courses have a way that they're supposed to be played, right? And you're not playing, you're not, you know, you're trying to play, especially in a competitive stroke play, you're trying to play the golf course the way the golf course was supposed to be played and execute those shots better, if that makes sense, right? And so that's who wins, right? The guys that play the golf course the way it was meant to be played and just hit it a little closer than the next guy, or make an extra putt or two than the next guy, right? And it was a total different concept to him. He's like, what are you talking about? You know, Jimmy shoots 68. I got to shoot 67. No, you don't. What are you talking about? I mean, I was astonished. And so I think we are sorely short in our business at teaching people how to do those things. Maybe it's a sign of changing times with the advent of rangefinders, you know, and goodness knows I use my rangefinder a lot, but you see my point. Maybe it's a new generation and they just don't do it the way we did it. I mean, I remember being taught that by my professional, and I was never really a good competitive player, but I got taught that nonetheless. And so I think we have to do a better job as instructors as a whole, getting them on the golf course and talking about strategy, talking about, to Clint's point, about, you know, how to hit this shot here. How, you know, do I hit this high? Do I need to stop it short? Do I hit this low and need to let it run out? You know, what's the slope going to do to it? What's the grain of the grass going to do to it? What's the lie going to do to it? You know, all those things that are very, very different from the flat, perfect lie on the driving range, right? How does all that play into how we're going to play? And I just don't think we do enough of it. And I try to spend as much time as I can out there with my better players. I mean, look, I'm going to tell you this real quick story, and then I'll shut up and let Clint talk for a little bit. I go up with one of my.
I'm loving it. I mean, you're just preaching to the choir now.
I go up. I go up to a web.com tour event, okay, with a new player of mine. I'd never been to a professional event with him. He had kind of signed on new, and I'm going to leave his name unnamed for obvious reasons.
Sure.
And I went up, and we're playing in a practice round, and he tees it up, and he's got, you know, a couple of his buddies that he plays with and travels with a little bit, and they're going to play some little $2 Nassau or whatever. And I'm all ready, right? I got my yardage book out, I got my pencil and my pen out, and I got my rangefinder, and I'm ready to, you know, to write some stuff down. And he plays the first hole. He played the golf course before, but he hits it down there, and he goes down there, and we're in carts, by the way, which is pretty rare for those events, but they got to take carts that day. And so we get down there, and we find out that, you know, he's hit it too far for what he wanted. And so he just kind of looks around, and he's like, I guess I should hit 3-iron here. And then he just proceeds to hit the next one on the green. And of course, I'm thinking, well, shouldn't we go back and hit 3-iron? And, you know, well, okay, all right. So we go up to the green. He hits it about 12 feet with a sand wedge, taps his putt in for birdie, and then goes to the next tee. And I'm thinking, really? Like, aren't we gonna hit some putts or check some slopes? I mean, what, you know? Oh, okay. I guess we're going on to the next tee. We go to the next tee, which is par 3. He hits it in the middle of the green. Right? Doesn't step a yardage off. Doesn't look at a tee marker. Just hits the club, hits it right in the middle of the green to about 25 feet. 2 putts it for par, and we go to the next hole. I'm thinking, right, okay. I hadn't written anything down yet, right? And this is the practice round. We go to the next hole. All right, now bear with me here. This is the end of the story, okay? So this guy hits a beautiful fade, right? I mean, about a 3-yard fade. I mean, it's just perfect, right? Every single time he swings it, it's perfect. We go to the next hole, and he's kind of lining up a little weird. You got, you know, death down the right-hand side and, you know, pretty open on the left. And he's kind of aiming down the right side a little more than I would think he would want to. I don't say anything to him, and he hits it, and it may still be bouncing in the trees right now to the right of this hole. He hit it so far in there. And we're riding down the fairway, and I said, Billy or whatever his name was, I said, what were you thinking there? He said, well, I was trying to, you see that tree down there, in the middle of the fairway? I said, yeah. He said, I was trying to play about a 1-yard draw onto that tree. I said, excuse me? And he just repeated himself. He thought, excuse me meant I didn't hear you. And I said, no, I heard you. I said, two things. I said, first of all, you don't hit draws. Like, what are you talking about, a draw? I'm like, the ball never curves left for you. You hit the most beautiful fade I've ever seen. Second of all, this is the fade hole. Why would you want to play it? Why would you want to play a draw? And this is what he says. Now, guys, this is a web.com player, okay?
Right.
This guy has the potential to make a very, very good living playing golf. He says to me, well, that's my draw club. I said, what? He said, well, that 3 would set up to hit a draw. I said, Billy, you realize it's an inanimate object, right? It doesn't do what you don't tell it to do. And he says, well, I'm telling you, it won't fade. I said, well, then it's broken because you just hit it 80 yards to the right.
Right.
80 yards to the right. And the point I'm making is here is a guy that's supposed to be at the elite level. He had no clue how to play a golf hole. No clue. Mm-hmm. Right? Which begs the question, my God, how good could he be? Right? I mean, how good could the guy be if he just had a little bit of knowledge on how to play golf? And so, sorry for my long story, but that just happened to me a few months ago, and I was floored. And so, again, I'll reiterate it and I'll shut up. I don't think we teach it enough, and I don't think we need to make the assumption as teachers in thinking that just because they play to a scratch handicap that they know how to do that. Because in my experience, the vast majority of them do not.
Right.
And I'll period and then I'll end it.
Yeah.
No,
that's
a great. Yeah, no, that's a great story, and I'm glad that you shared that with us, Brandon. Let me just add to this, and I take this out of sort of the Nicklaus playbook that sort of goes on to this. If you look at Jack Nicklaus, if you watch how he played, I think we would all agree he was a good fader of the ball. That was his go-to shot. That's what he was comfortable with. That's what he hit well. Could he draw the ball from time to time? I'm sure he could, but that was not his comfort shot. That's not what he played. And he often said that certain golf holes didn't suit his eye because of that. But you would never see Nicklaus do something that this gentleman did on the third hole. If he hit a nice fade out to the fairway and it's a fade hole, you wouldn't see Nicklaus go up there and try and hit a draw. He would continue to play the shot that he knew he needed to make in order to accomplish his task. And that is, in my opinion, this young gentleman that you just referred to goes into the management, course management, if you will. That's a mistake. That's a mental error on his part. And he may have, as you said, birdied the first one, parred the next one, and might ended up shooting a 68. And people say, well, what's wrong with that? He's in contention, perhaps. But at some point, he's going to be faced with a scenario where he's not going to know how to handle it or not know what to do. As you said, he doesn't know how to play the course. And this is where a lot of amateurs fall into. They don't understand how to play the course when they get out there, and they just hit whatever shot they think they might need to get to the green or to get off the first tee, and it may not be the proper way to play that particular hole to give yourself the best opportunities. And as I said, I take that from Nicklaus's playbook. Clint, do you want to add to that a little bit?
Yeah, I got a lot to add to that. I mean, guys. Well, first of all, back to the original thing, I try to teach even the beginners strategy.
Sure.
And here's the way I do it. I want them going out there trying to take, even off the first tee, what's your favorite club? I want them to hit a guy. If they really like their 5-wood, let's play the 5-wood off the tee. Something they got confidence in. Let's move it downrange. I want them using their favorite clubs. Learning how to get around the golf course. We see it all the time. Well, you got to buy this big driver, and it's the first. Got to hit a driver off the tee, right? You got to have that big driver. And I want them playing their favorite clubs, and that way they can learn to kind of manage their way around the golf course with a little bit of success if they got that good club in their hand. And that to get into he was talking about his web.com players. is part of that comes down to the type of golf courses that these kids have learned on and the equipment they're using. In the early stages of their golf career, they could overpower a golf course. They don't have to have strategy. They just blast it down there to 50 yards from dang green, pitch it up on the green, and hopefully they can putt. They never learn. See, Brandon, I don't know how old you are. I'm almost 60 years old. I can remember when they put 150-yard markers on my home course. We thought we were uptown. We knew where the 150-yard marker was.
Yeah, the little black and white barber pole that's set in the middle of the fairway.
Yeah, I mean, we had a little old now they put little stakes on each side of the fairway, and to this day I don't think they were 150 yards because the greenskeeper would come by and mow them, stick them back down wherever he wanted to, But the thing of it is, I mean, we learned to play by feel. We learned to look with our eyes and get a sense how far away we were, what kind of shot's going to bounce it up on the green and things. I mean, and what really gets me is you get a kid stands out there from 200 yards out with his rangefinder, and when he's 30 feet from the hole, he couldn't tell you if he was 10 inches away from the hole. Mm-hmm. And where do I need to know more? It's important to know how far away you are, but they do have a sense of that they've overpowered it. That's how they've learned how to play. Because all we hear, hit it long, 8 irons from 190 yards, I stood out. I was watching the U.S. Open, and these guys hitting that 4-iron on a 288-yard hole, and I'm laying up.
Right.
And I do think that during the U.S. Open, I thought that they did a nice job showing the yardage books. Mm-hmm. Did you pick that up watching the telecast? Is that they showed the yardage book and what they were looking at. I thought that was wonderful to show people. Obviously, a lot of people watching the U.S. Open, that this is what these guys are working with. This is the information. And all of these kids have data. I have data on my game. I know that I hit a 7-iron 155 yards or 150 yards. I know how far I hit each club. That's data that I've collected through experience. But then what am I going to do with that data? I do like people to get stats and understand, but what are we going to do with it? And these kids are never taught. I know when I was growing up, I looked at 2 people to help me improve the way I played, my dad and the local golf pro. That was the information we had. Yep. There was a few books and stuff, but you looked at that person that teach you how to play, and then the people you played with. You watched, you observed how they getting around the course. The older members of the club, you learn from experience. And I think it's your person on the web.com, he learned a little bit that day. That the difference, to me anyway, the difference between web.com and the regular tour is just that difference. How are they playing? Like Nicholas. Nicholas was never going to play a shot he wasn't comfortable with. And so it's one of those things where I agree with Brandon, as golf instructors for the players, I would say from 12 to 13 years old on up to the college level. I run this. I coached collegiate golf for 10 years at the junior college level, and these kids would come in, they could hit it. But the reason they were playing junior college golf versus D1 is they didn't know how to play.
Yep.
They could hit it. So I spent a lot of time trying to teach them how to play, and some of them accepted it, and some of them going, well, I just don't play. I don't do it that way. And so, I mean, I think you're right on the money, but I think that until we as golf professionals decide that we're going to help our students move away from that disinformation and being trapped to thinking they got to go beat balls on the range, that's what they're going to do. We have to be the leaders in our industry, not the followers.
Yeah, and Brandon and Clint, great points. You guys have hit it right on the nail on the head tonight. So thank you for that first off. And I hope that the listeners that are tuning in tonight's broadcast and the future listeners that are going to tune in a little bit later for the recorded version, I hope really take heed to what we've talked about here tonight. The purpose of Coach's Corner is really to help people think a little bit outside of the box, a little bit more, and not just, working on, well, how do I fix my slice, or how do I draw the ball? It's not about technique, but we want you to really think about how you need to play the game and how you should play the game. And there's no, there's no one methodology, if you will. There's no, magic elixir, if you will, out there in the golf industry, as you alluded to earlier, Clint. There's a lot of videos and things that circulate around, a lot of even instruction that circulates around about, well, you need to be doing this or you need to be doing that, with some new swing theory. And it seems to be focusing more on mechanics. And we're starting to see a shift in the industry, of course, as Brandon alluded to. Certainly more players are starting to understand the importance of stats, but they're also learning to look at other areas of the game, the physical part of the game, meaning their body, being in tune with what their body can do and can't do. Because as we've all observed over the years, guys, we look at some of the older players like the Nicklauses, the Tavinos, the Johnny Millers, and so forth. None of them had the same looking golf swing. They all had different ways of approaching it, but they were able to play the golf courses and ultimately earn them much success. And when you look at today's player, I think they're more concerned, about the technology and what the technology is telling them, instead of getting out in the golf course and actually playing the course the way it's meant to be played. And that's what we want to sort of, as you guys have pointed out, we want to start getting away from, getting people out there and playing, because I think ultimately if they do that, they're going to start having more fun and be less discouraged and dropping out of the sport altogether. So, guys, I'm going to give you an opportunity very quickly to both of you. Any final thoughts? Brandon, since you're a newcomer tonight, I'll let you have any closing thoughts, and also let the folks know if they're interested in reaching out to you for lessons or otherwise, how they can contact you.
Wow. Well, I wouldn't. You should have let Clint go first, because I don't really know what closing comments are supposed to be. But with that being said, I don't think I have much left to say. To your amateur golfers out there, go get some help, right? I mean, stop listening to magazines and listening to all these videos and trying to figure it out on your own. Get some help. And that may not be the cheapest way to do it, but find a qualified professional in your area and then seek out some help and then play some golf. To your point earlier, you're not going to get better if you don't play and you don't work on it.
Exactly.
Right? And so, get out there and play. As far as reaching out to me, my website's really the best way to get me. You can get there at BS, as in Bravo Sierra, bsgolf.com. I'm particularly fond of that URL. I searched for many years to get that one. It was a nice little twist and could be taken several different ways. But my first name is Brandon, so it does have some meaning other than what you might be thinking BS stands for. But anyway, all my contact information is there. If you want information about my book, you can find it there as well. And that's really the best way to reach out to me for any questions you might have. Just bsgolf.com, and I'd love to hear from you guys. That's it. I appreciate it, Ted. It was fun.
Perfect. Thank you, Brandon. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Clint, I'll let you wrap up the last moment or two as well before I let both of you go.
Not a problem. Hey, as usual, Ted and Brandon, it's been a pleasure. It's always nice to have a conversation about something that matters. But you can reach out to me. ClintGolf001 is the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I don't know if any of you folks are baseball fans, but I just got to put this out here. And I hate to do it because they beat my Gators. But the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers won the College World Series today. And so, baseball is king in Myrtle Beach tonight for at least one day.
Wait a second. By Gators, do you mean the Florida Gators?
That's the only Gators I've ever known. I mean, where are you going to go now? I mean, only reason I hate it now. If you're a Georgia fan, but I moved to Clemson because they hated Georgia worse than we did.
Clint, I don't even know you, brother, and I'm starting to lose a little tiny bit of respect for you now.
Come on, I'll come to make. Hey, look, I'm from Northwest Florida, and near Destin, Panama City. So I'll come through Macon every now and then. You can buy me lunch, and we'll discuss that.
Well, for the record, I am definitely not a Georgia Bulldog fan.
Well, I hate that.
I was born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee, and my blood runs orange. So,
well, now just hang on a minute now.
All right.
Yeah, I'm on. The show's going to end up. I have been to many a game at Tennessee. My youngest daughter's godfather was the president of the University of Tennessee, so I will tell you this: is I'm a Tennessee fan as long as they're not playing the Gators.
Well, I appreciate that, but I'm pretty much never a Florida Gator fan, despite who they're playing.
That's okay. I mean, we all got burdens to bear. Okay.
That's right. Well, gentlemen, let me just say this: it's up until the last minute. It's been a pleasure having you both on the show, but you got to take the fighting off the show. No, I'm only kidding. Clint, thank you as always for coming on the show, and Brandon,
no problem.
Did a fantastic job the first night. And as I mentioned to the audience out there earlier, Brandon Stooksbury is going to be on the show in 2 weeks' time, the 14th of July, as my special guest in the second half. And Clint, I know you'll be back for future Coach's Corner as well as Brandon. Whether or not you're going to be on the same panel the next time, I don't know. I may have to juggle things up a little bit.
We'll put up with each other, Ted. We'll put up.
That's right.
Okay.
You guys did a great job as always. Thank you very much to both of you. God bless and have a great holiday weekend. Happy 4th of July to both of you, and Godspeed, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, be safe. Thanks guys.
Ted.
See ya.
Appreciate it, man.
Bye-bye. All right, bye-bye. All right, that was my very special Coach's Corner panel tonight, Clint Wright and Brandon Stooksbury, two great seasoned veterans of the game, and certainly enjoyed having them on. But we're moving the show along, and I see my very special guest tonight is ready to join me here. She's actually been on the show before. She was a call-in, I guess a guest you could call her. If you recall, a few months back, Peggy Rhodes was on the show talking about, of course, her late father, Teddy Rhodes, who was a great asset to the game. He had played many, many years ago. Of course, he was African-American, one of the pioneers on the tour at that time, and really paved the way for many of the players like Tiger Woods, Lee Elder, and even Charlie Sifford to get out there and play with some of the best golfers in the world. And my guest coming up now is Asia Adell. She's a young up-and-comer. She is a professional golfer from Las Vegas, Nevada, and currently plays on the Cactus Tour out west, and is working her way to the full-time to the LPGA Tour. She's going to be going here. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a moment. She's going to be going to the LPGA Q School here, I believe in August, if I'm not mistaken, is when it is the first opportunity. And as I said, working towards her full-time LPGA Tour card. But just to give you a little bit of information, she attended high school at Clovis West in Fresno, California, and was a 4-time MVP. There she made school history as she led her Golden Eagle team to 4 straight Valley Championship titles and medaled numerous times individually. As a senior, Asia shot a record-breaking 300 par 69 to capture the Central Section North Area Championship. And while at the high school, she also won the Fresno City Amateur and the Len Ross Junior Championship titles as well. Many, many accolades. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but let me bring up my very special guest, professional golfer, Asia Adell. Good evening,
Hello,
Asia.
Ted. Good evening. Thank you so much for having me on Golf Talk Live again as your special guest. I'm honored.
Well, I'm glad to have you here, and as I briefly mentioned in the opening segment there, you came on actually with Peggy Rhodes as a call-in guest as well, and we talked about some of the things that she was doing, of course, with the Ted Rhodes Foundation, and had got some of your input as well. And before we get into sort of the meat and potatoes of our discussion tonight, I've got to ask you because as we know, we're connected on social media through Facebook and so forth, as I am with Peggy. And I know that she just recently celebrated a birthday in Las Vegas, and you, I believe, were with her at some of the occasions. So tell us briefly a little bit about that. How did that go, and did she win big when she was in Vegas?
Well, we did. We did get the opportunity to hang out and chat for a bit while she was here. She was celebrating her birthday. I'm not going to say how old she is, but I'll tell you that she looks great for her age. We had lunch on the Strip and did a little sightseeing, walked around her hotel, and just had a good time catching up. Peggy's been such a positive influence in my life and in my career. I've loved having her support and the support of the Ted Rhodes Foundation. So seeing her here in Vegas and her daughter Tiffany as well was just such a joy.
Yeah, perfect.
It was an absolute joy.
Yeah, Peggy's been on the show a few times, and a great guest, and just a real asset to the golf industry. I mean, she's working very hard, really to spread golf throughout different communities, but particularly through the African American community here in the United States and abroad. With the Ted Rhodes Foundation. And I know, just so that the people can kind of get up to speed, maybe you can just sort of reiterate a little bit about how your relationship with Peggy sort of evolved and sort of the affiliation and connection with the Ted Rhodes Foundation, how that sort of came about, and then we'll continue on.
Well, similar to you and I, Peggy and I actually connected on social media. So we started chatting on Facebook and got to know each other a bit, and she reached out to me and let me know kind of what the Ted Rhodes Foundation was all about, and that I was a great candidate for a Ted Rhodes Rising Star, which actually leads into an event that I'll be attending in August, actually August 8th. I'll be in St. Louis, Missouri for the Ted Rhodes Beat the Pro Classic, and Lee Elder will actually be in attendance there, so it'll be an honor to meet him and participate in all the festivities for such an amazing cause, because as I mentioned briefly on the show last time, that's what I seek to do once I make it to the LPGA, is just advance that minority participation in golf, because it's very disproportionate now. And I think basically what the game needs is more exposure for those young kids out there. And what her organization is doing, as well as organizations like the First Tee, is a step in the right direction, in my opinion. So I'm honored to partner with them and participate in those activities that further that cause.
And it's a great cause, and I'm 100% behind that. Let me just, for the listeners here, I'll throw out a few little tidbits as we go along. Just to let you know, of course, you went on to play Division I golf for 4 years, and you tied the school record with a 2-under par 70 at the Wichita State Invitational. A great collegiate career as well as a high school career, and now you're sort of navigating your way. Currently, right now, you're playing in a lot of the different Cactus Tour events, but you're preparing for the LPGA qualifying school this August in, of course, pursuit of your dream to compete full-time against, and I hate to use the term the big ladies, but I'm obviously referring to the LPGA Tour as I'll rephrase it. So let's talk about a little bit about what's happening right now, and we'll get into a little bit more why you went out to Las Vegas and why you're there and so forth. But let's talk about your pursuit of that card. What are you trying to do? What do you see, over the next few years? What's the vision or game plan that you have in getting yourself out? Obviously, first and foremost is get your tour card, but what is your short-term vision? What do you see as a long-term vision for Asia?
Well, my long-term vision, as I touched on a little earlier, would be to eventually get on the LPGA Tour and secure a lucrative career there. But in the meantime, what I'm doing now is competing on Cactus Tour events, which are primarily in Arizona, around the Phoenix area. So I drive from Las Vegas to Phoenix. It's about 4.5 hours. And professional golf at the mini tour level is not as glamorous as many people may think. It's a lot of time spent alone, a lot of time driving in hotels alone. And even for my tournaments, there are 54-hole events with no cut, and we get carts. So typically I won't even take a caddy for those events just to save on expenses. So it's a lot of time alone. But I absolutely love it, Ted. I love it, and at this level, I'm just building experience and trying to get more notches in my belt so that I'll be prepared come August and, come time to tee it up for my first time on the LPGA. So what I'm gearing towards now and what, all of my practice and all of my workouts are geared towards is Q School Stage 1, and that's August 22nd in California at Mission Hills Country Club.
Very good. Now, I mentioned briefly, and I'm going to let you explain a little bit more detail. I mentioned that you moved to Las Vegas. Obviously, it's a great climate there, but where are you originally from, and what brought you to the Las Vegas area? Why did you choose that specific area to sort of put roots down, if you will, to further your golf career?
Well, originally I was born and raised in the heart of Dixie, Montgomery, Alabama. That's where I first learned how to play golf at the age of 5. My dad put my first golf club in my hand, and I was hooked. So I played a lot of junior golf events in Montgomery through organizations like the First Tee and Right Start Junior Golf Academy. So I kind of got the golfing bug there, and then moved to California in 2004. I was 12 years old, and my parents got a job transfer. So in California, I played on my middle school golf team and my high school golf team, and then ultimately went to Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. And after my 4-year tenure at Cal Poly, I was almost at a crossroads. I got my degree in business and concentrated in marketing, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to pursue that or dive right into the world of professional golf. So I actually went into the corporate world for nearly a year, and I enjoyed it. It was really fulfilling, but this fire and this passion for golf was burning almost inside my gut, and I couldn't stay away from the course. So what I did was I researched a lot, and I realized that what I needed to do if I wanted to dive into professional golf and give it my all was move to Las Vegas, and that's where my golf coach is. So being closer to him, I felt like, was the key, was what I needed to advance my game if I was going to take it seriously. So that was the leap of faith, and now I'm here in Las Vegas pursuing my dream.
And you know what? It raises an interesting point. Obviously, you have a set goal, something that you want to do. You want to have a lucrative career, if you will, on the LPGA Tour. But something I want to point out, and this is sort of another little nugget I want to share with the audience, and of course I'm talking about your time at Cal Poly. Not only did you play some great golf there, but you also managed to earn a degree of business administration and particularly concentrated in marketing management. So, you didn't sacrifice a good education simply to get out and play golf. One of the mistakes that we've seen time and time again with a lot of younger players, which of course you fall into that category, is they want to skip over the education a little bit sometimes too quickly and get out there and they want to compete because they think they're good enough. You chose a different route. You're certainly competing, but at the same time you didn't sacrifice that education. How important is that to you to make sure that to keep yourself grounded, just in case? Now I'm not jinxing anything here, but just in case things on the tour, life on the tour doesn't end up going quite the way you foresee it. How important is that education to fall back on going to be for you?
Oh, you're totally right with that, Ted. So many athletes and so many of my friends actually chose to go to schools with, the top-notch athletic programs and sacrifice their academics, which was something I was unwilling to do. Had long talks with my parents about that because that was always of utmost importance to me. I had a 4.0 all throughout high school, and am a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to everything, but especially academics. I was a student that never really had to be pushed. I was always self-motivated and self-driven. So I told my parents, and I even told prospective coaches, that I wanted academics to come first. I knew how important, how vital that was in my life, ultimately, if golf didn't pan out, like you said. But I visited many schools, and when I went to Cal Poly and, learned about the prestige of that university and what a degree from Cal Poly meant, that sealed the deal. That really sealed the deal for me. And it was still a juggling act once I, attended my first class at Cal Poly. From the moment that I attended that first class to the moment that I walked across the stage in June of 2014, it was not easy. It was a constant, balancing act, like I said, between golf and school. I would often cut practice short by an hour or so to get back to school for projects or group meetings or to finish a late night assignment. So, I had many sleepless nights, and it was difficult, but like I said, I had the drive to get through it, and I saw the finish line, so that helped me through.
And I want to point out just one other thing on that note, which I think is very important for people to understand. And again, it goes to what I just said a moment ago. You graduated, obviously in June of 2014, but you actually didn't turn pro until November of 2014. And the reason why I want to make that distinction, point that out, is, and again, this is not a criticism to some of the other pros out there, but many of them will turn pro before they've even finished their collegiate school. And what might work for one might not work for somebody else. But one of the things that I find about the way you did it being better is the fact that you secured your education first. In other words, even though you have aspirations of playing professional golf, again, you kept yourself grounded and well-rooted in your education platform first. Make sure you got that, as you said, under your belt before you went to the next stage. You didn't try to rush the process, and that was a very smart move on your part.
Right. Yeah, my parents always stressed that fallback to me, and they said, life takes many turns, and you never really know. There's no real guarantees. So, you could get injured or anything could happen, and you want that solid degree to fall back on. So, I'm really thankful for their guidance and their support in that, because it definitely helped me, and it definitely, I think it gave me a more well-rounded college experience, finishing that out, getting my degree, and then choosing to focus on the golf.
Right. And because, the other thing, too, is, you can always, you're still obviously plenty young enough that you can, pursue the golf career, but it's a little more difficult if, you had pursued golf a little bit further advanced, and then all of a sudden now you want to go back and finish your degree, 10 years later. It's a little bit different approach to it. So I think the way you handled it and the steps that you took to advance it, as I said, were right on.
Well, thank you. There's another positive, I think, in doing that, and that's really allowing yourself to love the game again. And sometimes in college I see a lot of athletes get burnt out. I mean, you're constantly on the road from tournament to tournament, and if you dive right into the world of professional golf, like I said, that's taxing as well. I feel like you almost need that little break, if it's just, a month or so, to kind of gather yourself and rekindle that passion, because getting burnt out is, one of the worst things that could happen to a player.
Right, and there's a maturity thing as well. I think, to allow yourself to mature as a young woman, to be able to have experience, and I think you need to enjoy that college experience, that collegiate experience as you go along. And if you're too focused on your golf game all the time at a professional level, it's hard to really balance, as you said, successfully. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I think it does present some challenges that quite often are not. And I've heard, we've interviewed a number of the Symetra Tour players. Some have, done as you have done, and others sort of were wavering along the way, between college and as you said, a lot of times they're on their own, they're traveling a lot, and it can be very difficult trying to balance that. I remember Michelle Wee, when she was going out on the LPGA Tour and still going to Stanford, that's not an easy transition to be able to do that. I mean, she managed to, but I'm sure that there were things that we may not ever hear about.
There were sacrifices along the way.
Sure, exactly, and sometimes that's not always a good thing, but it can balance out in the end. But again, job well done. I want to
thank you.
As you're welcome. As we touch base on sort of that professional level now, in today's game, we talked about in the Coaches Corner panel a little bit earlier. With the guys on the panel discussion there, it's different for people that are playing at your level than it is, say, some of the amateurs out there, and it's different players at your level and obviously the LPGA and the PGA Tour than what it was, say, 25, 30 years ago. There's a lot more, there's a team, if you will, of individuals. Talk about your team and the importance of why, in today's competitive golf, why it's important to have a team around you to be able to help reach some of your goals.
Well, like I alluded to a little bit earlier, that sparked my move to Las Vegas, was knowing that I had to be closer to my golf coach at the Butch Harmon School to take things to the next level. So while I was living in California, I was driving about 6 hours to Las Vegas, I'd say every 2 or 3 months, to see my coach. So it was really infrequent, and it was hard to build upon. When I'd have a great lesson, and then I'd wait 3 months, and then I'd have another one and not really make that consistent progress that I was hoping for. So in moving to Las Vegas, it's been nothing but positive for my game all around. I've got my coach here, and I've also assembled a complete team, which is nothing – I haven't had that ever before. I've got golf-specific workouts now. I work out over in Henderson, the same city where my lessons are, at a studio called Anthem Fitness. And they're a TPI facility, so that's Titleist Performance Institute, and they specialize in all things golf. It's actually the team of people that Jordan Spieth works with. So
Right.
From the moment I stepped into the facilities, they did, diagnostic screening and determined every area where I was weak. So we did exercises from simple toe touches to ball tosses and hip rotations to determine exactly where I needed to work and where I needed to improve to see those drastic improvements in my performance on the golf course. So that was huge for me. It was expensive, but I definitely needed it to become a better golfer, and I'm still working with that team now. So I've got the fitness, and I've also got the sports psychology here in Vegas. And that's something that I've always tried to pay attention to in my golf game. I know, grinding on the range and playing a lot is one thing, but you see many neglect the mental game. And it's almost,
right.
You could correlate that with working out. I feel like you have to stay on a steady workout regimen to see results. The same with the mental game in golf. You can read a book, but if you don't apply it and, stay up on it, it's not going to be too beneficial for you. So getting my sports psychologist and him having talks with me and helping me learn how to control my thinking on the golf course really made the most pivotal change for me, I feel like, in my golf. After I started working with my sports psychologist, I cashed my first check on the Cactus Tour. It was almost instantaneous. I know you don't see results like that too often,
right?
But I could attribute a lot of my recent success to just changing my thinking and realizing that how I think oftentimes it directly correlates to my success and the result in the score. So adding that to my team has been awesome.
Right.
As well
Would
as
you
management.
agree? Right. Would you agree, Asia, then, in this statement? Obviously, the physical game, having sound fundamentals, and obviously being and I say relatively good ball striker. Obviously, to play at a tour level, you've got to be a pretty solid ball striker. But would you say in this statement that how you think your way around the golf course is equally, if not more important, on how well you hit the ball?
Oh, my gosh. I would say it's almost more important. Once you surpass a certain skill level, it becomes all mental because in your earlier segment, I know you guys touched a little bit upon seeing all sorts of swings out there. Nobody's got the quote-unquote perfect swing. So what it becomes then is a mental battle out there. And we've got one of the longest sports ever. At 4.5 hours out there, I don't know of anybody that grinds that long. So you've got to learn, how to control your thinking and how to be your own coach at times out there. And that's what my psychologist has taught me, and it's been a great weapon to have in the bag. Yeah, I know Bob Rotella in one of his books refers to a solid mental game as your 15th club. So you feel it gives you confidence to know that you can think your way around and maintain that even keel of emotions.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that you have to have that club, that 15th club in the bag always, regardless of what level. I want to water it down just a little bit because I know obviously we have a lot of amateurs that are tuning into the show tonight, and they're thinking, gosh, this is great. She's got all of these people around her to help her and guide her and bounce ideas off. But geez, I'm not a tour player, and I don't have the access to this sort of thing. But what are some things that amateurs can do? Obviously they can get involved in a fitness program, but they don't have access to a sports psychologist, maybe even a personal trainer or what have you, or a business manager, let's say. They don't have access to all this stuff, but they want to go out and play better golf. Based on your experience, because I know you've played with amateur golfers as well in different events and things like that, so you've observed how they handle themselves. If you were going to give them a few points to help improve their abilities, but also help improve their enjoyment of the game and fulfillment of the game, what would they be? Given the fact that you obviously have access to much more resources than they do, what would you say to the average amateur out there if you wanted to help their game, what they could do?
I think the most important tip that I could give would be to really monitor your thoughts during practice rounds. I know, like you said, it's expensive. It could be a money issue for the average amateur or even a time issue. So, I would suggest being your own coach. In a casual round with friends, just maybe jotting down some thoughts that, may arise, like I have to get it over this water hazard or I really don't want to bogey this hole, and just see what kind of positive statement could counter that. And a simple exercise like that, I guarantee could take some strokes off the average amateur's game, because it's not entirely skill. We know that with this game, even
right.
for the amateur, even for the beginner. You've got to tell yourself positive things on the course, and you've got to learn how to deal with adversity. So if they could just do a simple exercise like that and realize that they're in direct control of what they think, they could pick, awful thoughts and demanding thoughts, or they could pick great productive thoughts and thoughts that would help them to, in turn, perform better. So I think that would be my number one tip, number one piece of advice for the average amateur.
And do you think you agree? Again, you touched on that you had tuned into a little bit. I don't know how much of the segment you heard, but one of the comments that was made and part of the discussion that both the gentleman and myself had talked about was that a lot of the players don't understand how to actually play the golf course. They're more focused on, if they can hit the ball decently, and they just sort of go through the motions. And that falls into that sort of, course management and people, as I mentioned in the segment, Jack Nicklaus was one that we all come to mind with, but and certainly Annika Sorenstam. One of the interesting points I want to make about Annika that I didn't even realize, but years ago in one of the U.S. Opens, she struggled with this, and I want to know if this is something similar that you struggle with, is she had a hard time sort of shutting her mind off in between shots. She had so much going through her mind at the time. What do you do, let's say you've hit your good drive off the tee. Are you thinking necessarily about the next shot all the way up to that shot, or do you let your mind sort of rest a little bit and, for lack of better words, smell the flowers? What's your process around the golf course? Are you, for that 4.5 hours, are you focused in golf, or do you let your mind sometimes relax a little bit, as though you're, taking a walk in the park? What do you do as part of your
Ted,
strategy?
that's something that didn't come easy at all to me. I actually had to learn that throughout my years of competing and playing in tournaments. I learned that I needed to defocus. At the junior golf level, I would actually have headaches after playing a round of golf, just because I would be focusing the entire time and often not eating, not taking in any snacks.
Right.
So I learned that in between shots, I've actually got to defocus and take in my surroundings. So a lot of times now, I'll just look around. I'll listen and I'll look. I'll hear the birds chirping. I'll see the flowers, and it kind of gets me off of golf just for that, momentary second. And I can, just forget about where I am and forget about the implications of the shot until it's necessary, until it's time to do that. But, in between, I think I read somewhere that the actual time spent playing golf, as in hitting shots, is only 2.5 minutes per round. The rest of the time you have, your mind is free. Your mind is wandering. So if you could keep it on, the right things, positive things, and things that make you happy, because in the end it's all about having fun. It's a game. We want to do well, but it's all about having fun. So I've reminded myself actually to defocus, whether that be, writing something on your glove, or in some cases having a good caddy, that takes you away from the moment, or a playing partner that you enjoy being with, and someone that you can talk about other things with is important, because it's a long time to focus out there, and you absolutely can't do it. I don't think it's humanly possible to do it for 5 hours.
Right, and this was something, and the reason why I wanted to mention that is on the other show that I host with LPGA professional Cindy Miller, who's been around the game for a long time. Of course, she's played on the LPGA Tour as well as she now plays from time to time on the Legends Tour. But she was actually on one of the early big breaks on the Golf Channel. That's sort of how she sort of got her start in the public view, if you will. But she was the one that brought that story to the other program, which airs Tuesday mornings, by the way, for those of you tuning in from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern, called the Women of Golf show. And that's something that we do together. And she brought that story about Annika Sorenstam because that was something that Annika, of course, was a very, not just a great ball striker in that, but she was a real thinker around the golf. She was like the female version, if you will, of Jack Nicklaus. I mean, she was a great thinker around the golf course, but even she found herself at times, she would get so focused. I don't know whether she got headaches or not, but she got too focused on the golf course and wasn't able to unwind a little bit. And I think as her career progressed, she had to learn that skill as well. And you're right. I think it's important. You as you're walking along, you have to take notice of what's going on around you. The birds and things like that. And then there's a point in time when you have to re-engage as you prepare for that next shot and refocus again. But you have to decompress because you're right. You can't go 4.5, 5 hours with nothing but, grinding golf and gears in your head because you're just going to burn out after a period of time, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you can't clench your teeth and grind the whole time. That's nearly impossible. And it makes it, like I said, it doesn't make it fun. So you've got to get back into what makes it fun. And for me, that is defocusing in between shots and just taking it all in, enjoying where I'm at.
Now, what do you do? And I want to keep on the focus here of sort of the mental side of the game. And everybody, I don't care how good of an athlete you are, everybody has some bad moments out in the golf course. Did you have to learn? Did you ever sort of beat yourself up on the golf course when things weren't going well? How did you handle yourself initially as opposed to maybe how you handle yourself now, or was it pretty much the same as what you're doing now?
Oh, most definitely. That's a learned skill for me. Like I mentioned, I'm a perfectionist in just about everything I do. And it was hard to separate that when it came to athletics because in academics it was great. I'd stay up all night and I'd study and I'd get the good grades and I had the 4.0. But in golf it doesn't always work like that. You can't expect everything to go your way. You're going to get some bad breaks from time to time. And, in years past, what I would do was, like you said, I would beat myself up about it and I wouldn't be, I wouldn't display this outwardly. It was more of an inward disappointment. I'd tell myself things like I'm capable of better or I shouldn't be making mistakes like that at this level or, now I'm in a hole and I'm going to have to climb out of this. So I'm going to have to – I put undue pressure on myself. I put expectations on myself a lot of times, and I just realized that it was counterproductive. So I learned the skill of basically decreasing my expectations when I stepped out onto the tee and being accepting of whatever came my way, whatever the course decided to give me, knowing that I'd put in the hard work and that I'd practiced and that I was confident in my skills, but separating that and kind of disconnecting with the results was what helped me to improve my scores. Because as long as you go out there, in my opinion, with expectations and placing heavy demands on your performance, it doesn't lead to better scores. This game is so counterintuitive. It's almost like the harder you try, the longer it takes to see results. But once you develop the attitude of either lower expectations or for some just not caring at all, that's when the scores improve. So that's something that I had to learn as a perfectionist, to almost separate that and rewire myself mentally to understand that I'm human and that everything's not going to be perfect.
Right, which is just about to say that, which is not easy to do for somebody who, is a perfectionist. Because you're right. Mentally, you may not be verbally, casting for lack of better words, those demons outward, but internally, your mind is working overtime, thinking, "Gosh, I can't believe I just hit that bad shot," and as you said, I can do better than that. So you have to reprogram yourself, and that works into. And there's a lot of great, again, working with a sports psychologist and some of the other mental aspects and mental professionals out there that can help you sort of rewire and reharness the dialogue that goes on inside. And the other thing, too, is it's not just a matter of, positive thinking. It's a matter of handling your emotions. Handling your emotions out in the golf course is critical, especially at the level that you're playing, because that's really sort of the Achilles heel. Everybody hits a bad shot. I don't care, Jordan Spieth, you, me, whatever the case may be. We're all going to hit some bad shots. We can live with that. It's how we handle our emotions on the golf course. If we allow ourselves to get overly frustrated or exhausted all the time, it just wears you down, and then slowly everything sort of falls apart. The wheels start coming off the bus, if you will, and it goes down the hole from there. And that's something, again, it's a learned experience and trial and error a little bit as well. Something else that I want, when you're out there playing, and obviously you've got people in the gallery, something I always like to ask professionals when they're out there, what do you want people to be watching when they're watching you? What do you want them to take away to learn from how you're playing? Is it the way, obviously, they're going to see your swing and things like that, but
right.
What do you want them, when they go to a golf event, in other words, certainly you want them to have fun and enjoy what's happening, but at the same time, if they can pick up some little nuggets and tidbits from your play, what do you think they should be looking for and focusing on as far as your play is concerned?
As far as my play is concerned, I'd love for whoever's watching me to say that I'm a great manager of the course. That's something that I've worked hard on, is my course management and really dissecting courses and, realizing which holes are red lights, which holes are yellow lights, so to speak, and which holes are go for it green lights. So I'd like for somebody to compliment me on my skill and my course management. But even beyond that, I think the best compliment that I've received on the golf course, in fact, it wasn't even golf related. It was someone at a tournament in Buckeye, Arizona, Cactus Tour event, Sundance. They told me that they could see Christ in me just with the way that I handled myself and my grace on the golf course. I actually was playing well that day. But to me, that didn't even matter. What I got from this man was an even better compliment, that, he could tell that Christ was inside of me with the way I handled myself. And that just made me feel so good. In fact, I posted it on my personal website, because that's something that has also been a process with me, is my faith. I wasn't always as strong of a Christian as I am now. And I feel like my faith has been shaped through golf. Something that a lot of people don't know about me is that I kind of had this change in perspective in 2011. I qualified for the U.S. Amateur Golf Tournament. It was the biggest event that I'd qualified for in my life. I'd never competed in a USGA-sanctioned event before, and I was just really, really excited to have that opportunity. I qualified in San Diego, I believe, and made it to Rhode Island in 2011, and vowed that, I would prepare harder than anybody else, that I would, sacrifice and make the necessary changes in my swing to be prepared and be as ready as I could be. So I get to this tournament, and I'm playing some really solid golf. In fact, I challenged everybody in the Fresno, California area to match play, because I knew that was the format of the tournament, 2 days of stroke play, match play to follow. So I was definitely the most prepared, in my opinion. But I got there to that tournament, and on the fourth hole of regulation play, I got this sharp, sharp pain in my left oblique, like nothing that I had ever felt before, and I was doubled over. And the shot was out of heavy rough, and I did have an awkward stance. But I swung all out at it, and after that, like I said, was doubled over. So I told my dad, who was on the bag, I said, "Dad, I'm really, really hurting, and I think it's serious because, I can't even stand up right now." And he said, "Oh, you'll probably be okay. Just shake it off." And we walked to the green. I actually ended up parring the hole, but the pain got progressively worse, and I didn't know what it was. So I ended up grinding out the round, but I had to go to urgent care after to find out that I had severely strained that oblique and had to take 4 weeks off of golf. So you could imagine me, with my preparation, with my confidence in my game, and this being the biggest tournament that I'd ever qualified for, being angry. I was just really, really angry and questioning, why me? Why now? And it was then that I sort of had to renew my perspective and change my mindset, because I realized, I looked deep within myself after that happened and said, what's going on? And I realized that golf had ultimately taken over in my life. Everything was centered around golf. It was the most important thing, and relationships suffered. Everything suffered as a result of golf. So I wasn't leading a very balanced life. It almost consumed me in a way. So after that USAM, what I realized was that I needed to get closer to God and realize why I was playing golf. And that's ultimately now to glorify Him. I've got a verse that I have on my website, on the very front page of my website. It says, "And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through Him." That's Colossians 3:17, and I live by that now, because I realize that there's a lot more to life than the sport that I play. But if I could use that as a platform to glorify him and with the talent that he's given me, then, I can do that most definitely. But that's no longer is it the most important thing in my life. And I've, surprisingly, I've played a lot better golf since I've changed my attitude. But that's something that people don't know about me. But if they could take that away after seeing me play a round of golf, I would be, that would be the best compliment anyone could give me.
Well said. I agree 100% with with your statement. I agree that you have to put things in perspective, and really, as you pointed out earlier as well, golf is just a game, and you've obviously been given certain gifts that far exceed maybe some of the amateurs out there, and those are obviously gifts from God, and those are things that you can use. Not just for your enjoyment, obviously, but for His glory as well. And I agree with you 100%.
Exactly.
And it's good at the age that you're at that you recognize that, because a lot of people don't see that until much later in life, and by that time, they look back with regret. So it's good that you were able to learn that lesson very early on and can move forward as a result of that.
Right. It helps you to take the good and the bad. This sport.
Right. It puts things in perspective.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Exactly. All right, let me ask you something here, and something I noticed when you had sent over some of the photos for me to preparation of the show, and I want you to explain the relationship with this gentleman. I noticed that you had a logo on some of the clothing that you're wearing, your cap, of course, and I believe your golf shirt and that. Tell us a little bit about Peter and how you how you met. I know Peter. That's why I'm throwing this out there as a plug for him. But tell us first off who I'm referring to and sort of how you came about meeting Peter and acquiring some of the. Is he a sponsor or what is the relationship there?
Right. Yeah. Peter Andrew. He owns a clothing brand called PA Golf. He's from Switzerland, and he reached out to me on Facebook, and this was before I even turned professional. So his message actually came as a shock to me because I didn't know that I was getting any exposure yet. So he messaged me on Facebook and told me about his brand and that they'd be interested in sending me some gear. So him and I had a relationship, a professional relationship for a couple years. He sent me some clothes and a golf bag, but we're no longer working together now.
Right.
But, his brand is worldwide, and he's got tons of apparel, even non-golf apparel, even fitness apparel and casual wear. So, it was great to be associated with him for that time and get to wear his gear and spread the word about PA Golf. But we're no longer working together now.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that, and I wasn't sure what the status of the relationship. But the reason I wanted to mention that is he obviously has some very interesting designs and very forward-thinking designs, and they were great outfits, by the way. I just wanted to quickly mention that. I know Peter very well. He's actually connected with him on social media as well, and we've corresponded a number of times over the years. But I just wanted to mention that very quickly. But lastly, what I want to talk about is something that you touched on earlier in the segment. You talked about obviously some of your LPGA goals and sort of what you want to do on the LPGA Tour once you get out there. But also you want to help to advance not only the female but also the minority participation in golf. We're starting to, doors are starting to open. We've got obviously a long way to go yet, but certainly some doors have been opened through some of the greats. Teddy Rhodes, as we mentioned earlier. Charlie Sifford, of course, who unfortunately is no longer with us as well, and Lee Elder, who you're going to be seeing here shortly.
On the 8th.
Right, exactly. And obviously, Tiger Woods. We don't see a lot of, and when I say minority, we're certainly seeing a lot of Asian golfers coming from the Pacific and things, Asia Pacific and so forth and like that. But we're not seeing a lot of African American girls out on the tour right now. What do you think is it going to do? What do you hope to be able to do, or how do you think it's going to be able to get them interested in, I mean, obviously the Williams sisters play tennis. They've been certainly instrumental in opening that door, but we're not seeing it on the golf side. What do you hope to accomplish through your efforts out on the tour to be able to create, obviously, exposure, but what do you hope to be able to do to encourage more young African-American golfers, female golfers particularly, to gravitate to the sport? What do you think it's going to take?
Well, for me, it's twofold, and this is actually something that I spoke with my mom about, as well as the Ted Rhodes Foundation. And what I'd like to do eventually would be to travel nationwide and host clinics and golf camps and potential speaking engagements at middle schools to just kind of captivate these youth and show them a familiar face, a face that they could relate to. As a black female golfer, there's, I think, 2 on tour right now with full status. So there's not many faces, not many people that they see on tour that look like them. So I'd love to use my platform and actually be there, to be present, to be in front of these children and host clinics, golf camps, and just speak to them, engage them that way. And then the second part of it would be to set up golf courses or driving range, even par 3 courses in these underprivileged areas. I think that's what they're lacking because golf is so expensive. I think, it's easy for a kid to pick up a basketball and go shoot at the goal in the street or toss a football or, play with the kids at school during recess. It's easy to do those sports and it's cheap. But with golf, how often is golf taught as an activity in physical education class or at recess? I know we had it at my high school, and that was rare. I haven't talked to anybody else that had a golf class in school at the grade school level. So I think doing things like that and then having places where the kids can take it from the school to the course across the street or to the driving range with mom and dad and for it to be affordable would be huge. So that's my overall vision. I would love to grow the game that way and set up, an organization in the future with my name attached to it. I think, that'd be a dream come true.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I think it's the exposure to the grade school level, as you said. Certainly in high school and obviously at the collegiate level, you're seeing a different representation. But by that time, there's a lot of missed opportunities, particularly for young women and particularly for young minority women who haven't had that early exposure. And I think there are certainly efforts to bring golf into the school, to the earlier school grades and that. But again, because of the cost involved, personally, what I would like to see, this is an opportunity, I think, for not just businesses in the golf industry. They can certainly do their part by providing equipment and things like that in the school system. But I would like to see some of the major corporations, because as you know as well as I do, golf's not just about outgoing, having fun, and playing day in, day out. It's become a very powerful business tool, and has been for years, obviously for men. But for women are starting to see the opportunities and the advancements in their business side of things by adding golf as part of their repertoire, if you will. So
Most
what
definitely.
I'd like to see. Yeah, I'd sort of like to see a marriage, if you will, between some of the major corporations here in the U.S., whether it be American Express and corporations of that size, along partnering with some of the club manufacturers like Titleist, TaylorMade, and so on and so forth, Callaway, to name a few, and say, look, we're going to provide some of the equipment. If you can help with some of the funding to cover the cost, let's get golf into the school system at an earlier age. Just expose it, even if it starts as an after-school thing, and then work in it, just to expose it. Because I think once kids get exposed to something like they do basketball, football, and some of the other sports, then as they progress through their later years, they're more inclined to want to do that. But as you say, if they're not being exposed to it until high school, by that time they've already adopted other interests. So what you're proposing here, I think, is a great idea, and I think what I'm talking about as well is a direction I think the industry itself, but also the corporate world, has to adopt as well. Would you agree with that, you think?
I agree 100%. And like you said, even if these youth don't want to pursue it professionally or take it to the highest level that they possibly can, it's a valuable tool and a valuable asset in the business world. I know it fared well for me when I was in the corporate world right after college. My boss really loved the fact that I played golf. In fact, we'd have outings, and that would be our time. That would be our work time. We would discuss business. We'd meet with clients, but we'd be golfing. And he loved that. You're almost more respected in a way. Saying, you play golf. It's a valuable tool, I think, and it could only be positive, getting these kids exposure at a young age and teaching them the many, many benefits.
Well, and it also, too, as again, we both know, being in the golf business but also playing golf as a sport and as a game, we understand how closely golf mimics life. A lot of people that really have not been exposed to golf don't understand that through these trials and tribulations that you experience out in the golf course very closely mimic some of the trials and tribulations that you experience in your personal life. And you can learn, believe it or not, some life lessons while you're out in the golf course, how to handle yourself, how to handle your emotions, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of tools that can be learned in life while out in the golf course while having some fun at the same time. So there's a lot of benefits to doing that. And I agree, and I think that's a very respectable goal that you've attached to yourself, for once you get down the road a little ways. I mean, certainly you're going to start and do things now and have, but that's something to aspire to as well, as you continue your journey on as a professional, to be able to give back and expose people to the game. Because I think once you kind of get, as you did earlier on in Montgomery, once you kind of got exposed that, it's very easy to understand how people can get hooked on the game and think, wow, this is a lot more fun than I ever thought. Because when they see it on TV, they don't appreciate it. It looks unattainable, unattached, because they don't see it in their everyday life as they do with other sports. So again,
there's a lot of stereotypes and a lot of walls that have to be broken down to actually get the youth to get hooked like I was, and get them to catch on and realize it's not exactly what meets the eye. Once you put that first club in their hand and they see and they get the joy of striking that first shot, in my opinion, it all changes. But, that's the ultimate vision for me. I've got a lot of steps in between, and in between and on the way, but that's the ultimate vision, and I can see it, Ted. I really can.
Yeah, and I have no doubts that you're going to accomplish that, and, I just think it's a matter of keeping, as you discussed earlier, keeping your eyes focused on the man above, and with that vision, because he's going to provide the navigation, if you will, and just listening to what he says to you and how he guides you is going to certainly help those dreams and ambitions come to fruition. I can't believe how fast this hour flew by.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, you're right.
We're actually here just the last few minutes. So Asia, I want to give you an opportunity very quickly, if you can, just to let the folks, if they want to reach out, and you mentioned you not only your Facebook, but you also have a website if they want to follow along with what's unfolding over the next little while, and go ahead and let them know how they can connect with you.
Right. My website would be the best way to follow me on my journey and contact me. It's www.asiaadell, ASIAADELL.com. And I post regular updates and tournament results and all sorts of good info on my website. So that would be the best way. I've also got a Facebook fan page, and that's facebook.com/Asia Adell Golf, as well as a GoFundMe with the same /Asia Adell Golf, because as I mentioned, it's expensive at this level, especially with Q School coming up. That's $2,500 for stage 1. Right. Stage 3 is $3,000. Right. So I would love any support.
Right. When is it's in August, right? When is the first stage coming up?
The first stage is August 22nd through the 28th, and that's at Mission Hills Country Club in Rancho Mirage, California.
Perfect. Well, I can't think of a better place to start off in a beautiful California to get out. And that's the other benefit, is some great golf courses all over the place that you can get out. So that's another reason just to take up the sport, if nothing else, to get out and see some beautiful landscape out in the golf course. So, Asia, I want to thank you for coming back, and you have my personal invitation to come back anytime. I would love to. And there's some things I want to talk to you about, and we'll talk about it at a later point, but I certainly want to keep close onto your journey through here, and you certainly have an open invitation to come back anytime on Golf Talk Live.
Well, thank you so much, Ted. It's really, really been my honor. I've enjoyed chatting with you this evening. and I would love to appear on the show in the future. So we'll keep in touch and definitely plan a later date.
Sounds good. Well, Asia, again, on behalf of myself and the listening audience, again, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed this last hour, and I wish we had more time in this segment, but unfortunately I've got to wind things up. But I appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your vision and some of what you do, and hopefully the listeners that have been tuning in for the last hour can take away a few little nuggets here and there to help with their journey, whether they're aspiring to be a touring professional as you are, or whether they just want to go out and have some fun with their fellow competitors or friends or family, whatever the case may be. Hopefully they've learned from you as well in this evening's journey. So thank you, Asia, for sharing that with my audience, and I look forward to having you come back again in the future.
No, thank you. I really, really appreciate it, and we'll be in touch, Ted.
For sure. And good luck. Let me know how you make out on your quest for the card.
Most definitely. I'll keep you in the loop.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much, Asia. God bless.
Thank you,
have a great
Ted.
evening. And happy 4th of July. All right.
Oh,
bye-bye.
yeah, happy 4th to you. Enjoy your holiday.
Right. I will do that. Thank you very much. All right, have a great night.
All righty, you too. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right, that was my very special guest, Asia Adell, professional golfer, as I mentioned earlier, currently on the Cactus Tour out in the western part of the United States, and some beautiful country out in that area as well. Great climate. Couldn't think of a better climate to be out and enjoying some of the great golf that they have out in Arizona, and also out in Las Vegas area, which she currently resides now. And as we just talked about, she's going to be going through the Stage 1 qualifying here in just a little over a month's time, but a month and a half time, I guess, out in Rancho Mirage in California. So good luck to Asia as well. But I want to thank her as well for joining me, and also for the panelists earlier, Clint Wright and Brandon Stooksbury, for joining on the Coach's Corner panel on the first hour. Thanks, guys, for doing a fantastic job. Thank you, Asia, as well. And I want to thank all of my listeners for faithfully tuning around from all over the world, for faithfully tuning into Golf Talk Live each and every week. I love your support and your well wishes always, and thank you for sharing the links. And remember, every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central or 7 to 9 Eastern Time, you can find me right here in Golf Talk Live. Just go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live, and you can tune in and join us live every Thursday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Central. And for some reason, if you can't, just go to that link, blogtalkradio.com, type in Golf Talk Live up in the search key, and that will take you to the home page, and just scroll down to the on-demand section, and you can listen to the previously aired and recorded versions as well. And also don't forget to join LPGA professional Cindy Miller and I every Tuesday morning on the Women of Golf show. Again, that's on blogtalkradio.com network. Instead of Golf Talk Live, type Women of Golf, and that will take you to the Tuesday morning show, which airs 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then you'll find both myself and LPGA professional and Legends Tour player Cindy Miller as we talk about some of the great things happening in women's golf. And we a lot of times we'll have some great players from the LPGA, but also particularly from the Symetra Tour, as well as some great female golf professionals out there, LPGA, not only players, but teach professionals as well, come on and share some of their thoughts and visions and how they're helping to grow the game in women's golf. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for all the supporters and sponsors of the show. My good friend, Mr. Jonathan Laird from South Coast Golf Guide. So go to southcoastgolfguide.com to learn more about his great publication in that. Some great courses here in the southeastern part of the United States, literally from Texas all the way over here to Florida. You'll find them in the South Coast Golf Guide. Go to southcoastgolfguide.com. And you can check out his website as well. Thank you, Jonathan, for all of your continued support. And remember to tune in next week. Have a happy 4th of July, everybody. God bless. And have a safe and happy Independence Day coming up here on Monday, and a great weekend. And I will see you next Thursday right here on Golf Talk Live. Thanks, everybody.